Welcome to part 6 and the final part of this Blender tutorial series where we're creating this cute sci-fi robot. If you haven't seen the previous parts, you can check out the tutorial playlist with the link in the video description. So this is the final part, and in this part we're going to be doing the animation, the rendering, and then the video editing. And then one more thing before we start, if animation is something that you're really interested in, then you might be interested in checking out this animation course. P2 Design's Alive animation course is packed with tons of animation learning content. Great for beginner and intermediate Blender users. This course will teach you the basics of animation, adding keyframes, interpolation modes, using the timeline, graph editor, and there are also some beginner animation exercises in the course. The course also shows you how to make a walk cycle and has some other animation tutorials. Check out the course with the link in the description, and if you purchase the course through my affiliate link, you'll be helping to support this channel. Alright, so I'm going to start off by adding a ground plane. So I'm going to center the 3D cursor, and let's go to the add menu and add a plane, and I'll go into edit mode and I'll scale the plane way up, and then I'll select the two back vertices and I'll extrude them up on the Z axis. Then I'm going to select these two vertices on the back here, and I'm going to hit Control B to add a bevel to make a nice backdrop, and I'm going to scroll my mouse wheel to add some more cuts to the bevel, and just click to place that right there. And then back in object mode, we can shade it smooth. So we have just a nice backdrop. So if I just kind of navigate right here, you can see we're going to add a camera right about here, and it will just add a nice backdrop. Now what I'm going to do is select the backdrop, and I'm going to press F2 to rename it, and I can just call it background. And then what I'm going to do is turn on the lights and camera collection, and I'm going to move this into the lights and camera collection. Then I'm going to add a camera. So let's go to the add menu, and I'm going to add a camera, and I will bring my camera view to about here, and I'll hit Control Alt Numpad 0 to bring the camera to my view. And I'll go into the rendered view, and let's just maybe move the camera back a bit. So now I want to select the background, and the lights and camera collection actually isn't selectable. So let's click on this button here in the outliner to make it selectable. Alright, so now I'm going to select the background object, and let's go to the materials, and I'm going to add a new material, and I can just call this material ground. So for this material, I'm going to make it a nice dark gray color, and if you want to use the same hex code, you can punch in 2D, 2D, 2D into the hex code for the base color. And then I'm going to open up the specular value, and I'm going to take this IOR and I'm going to turn it way down to maybe like a 0.05 or 0.2 or something like that, so that the specular is lower, and that way there won't be quite as many reflections. And then we can also turn the roughness up a little bit if we want to. I can also just select the camera, and maybe I'll rotate it and move it over, and just stick it somewhere, maybe bring it down a little bit, and then let's rotate it so it's pointed up a little bit more. So we're going to select the main controller for the robot, and we're also going to turn on the auto key here so it automatically adds keyframes. Then we're also going to set the end frame to 140. It's going to be a pretty quick animation, so I'll just do 140. So now what we're going to do is go to frame 1, and then we're going to place the robot. So I'll hit G, and then what I can do is hit Shift Z to exclude the Z axis, so I can just move it along the ground. Now let's bring it over here like that, and then let's also rotate it on the Z axis and bring it back a bit. And then if we zoom into the robot, let's go down here to the bottom and go back to solid view, and we want to bring it down a little bit just so that the wheel is going slightly through the ground, just so it looks like it's resting on the ground more. All right, and let's bring it back, kind of rotate it. We're going to stick it right back there for now. And you can see, because we had an auto key on, you can see it automatically added a keyframe, so the yellow diamond is a keyframe. So now I'm going to move over to frame 45. So at frame 45, I'm going to go to top view, and I'm going to zoom out here, and I'm going to hit G to grab, and then R to rotate, and I'm just going to stick it kind of right there so it's more in the center of the scene. Let's go back to the camera view, maybe move it over a little bit, and then rotate it a little bit. So now if we go back and forth, you can see he just kind of goes into the scene. Also back on frame 1, let's maybe rotate it a little bit and bring it back a little bit farther. So now you can see he just kind of comes into the scene. Then we're going to go to frame 90, and at frame 90, let's go to top view, and we're just going to move it slightly forward, but not very much, so it just moves by a very small amount. So the robot's just going to move a very small amount from frame 45 to frame 90. Then let's go to the very end frame, so frame 140, and we'll go to top view, and I'm going to bring it over out of the camera view and then move it over a little bit. So now the camera's, or the robot's just going to go out of the camera's view. So like that. Then I'm going to go back to frame 15. Let's go to 15. And I want the robot to be moving a little bit faster. So if we go to top view, let's rotate it and move it a little bit forward so that it just moves a little bit faster. So as the robot's just starting to come in, he moves a little bit faster. And so by bringing him forward to frame 15, he's going to have to speed up a little bit faster at the starting. Now let's go to frame 30, and we can go to top view, and let's just actually go back and forth. So you can see right here, here, the robot just kind of curves around, whereas I want him to kind of at frame 30 be a little bit more over here and then quickly kind of move around, so kind of rotate. So let's rotate it back and then move it up a little bit, so that's a little bit more straight. And you can see that was actually too far, so let's move it down a little bit. So I want it to be a little bit more straight, so that basically from the starting here, he's pretty straight, and then he's going to turn a lot more quickly. So maybe even move this a little bit farther back, and then he's going to rotate a bit more quickly, maybe rotate the robot just a little bit more. And then let's go over to frame 90, and I can see from frame 45 to 90, he kind of turns a little bit, and I don't want that. So on frame 90, I'm going to rotate it back a little bit, just so he doesn't move that much. Let's rotate it a little bit more. So he pretty much stays where he is, but maybe just moves slightly forward. I might go to frame 45 and just move him back a little bit, just so he slightly moves forward, just like that. So he comes in, then he rotates over, and then he moves really slowly. So now I'm going to go to frame 110. And at frame 110, I'm going to rotate the robot a little bit and move it back a little bit, so that the robot will start to move and then turn. So instead of the curve being really like slow, it's going to be a little bit more sharp. So that way it'll look more deliberate, because he's going to turn and then start to go away, start to move out of the camera view. Let's go into the camera view and see how this is looking. So it kind of comes in, rotates over, then he moves really slowly and then turns and then moves away. And I think this frame at 110 could also be dragged back a little bit, so it's not quite as fast. So maybe bring it over to frame 115. So I just selected the keyframe and moved it over to frame 115. All right, let's save the project. So there's the basic movement for the robot. So now what I'm going to do is select the main body object, and we're going to have the body kind of move back and forth. So let's go to frame 30, and with the body selected, let's just zoom into the body. We're going to rotate it forward, because if he's moving forward, it would make sense that his body would be kind of coming forward a bit. And then we're going to make his body kind of swing back as he slows down. So let's go to around frame 55, and we're going to rotate it back. So on frame 55, rotate it back so he's just kind of straight up. So we can now go like 10 frames back. So instead of 55, we're going to go back to 45, and we're going to rotate him actually moving back. So that way, as he slows down, you can see it kind of looks like he has to kind of slow down because of his weight. So he moves forward, and then he kind of has to back up a little bit or kind of rotate back so that he kind of stays stable. So he kind of swings back, and then he just kind of comes forward. So if I just play this, he kind of swings back and then stops. Kind of gives some weight to the character, so he has to slow down. And I think maybe when he rotates back, it's a little bit too fast. So I'm going to select the keyframe at 55 and drag it over to 60. So it's just a little bit slower. So let's now go over to frame 100. And at frame 100, I want it to basically be the same. So we're going to select this keyframe and hit Shift D, duplicate it. And we're going to drop it here at frame 100. Now I'm going to move over, and let's go to around frame 110. And at frame 110, he's going to rotate his body down a little bit. So he's starting to move forward again. And then let's maybe select the keyframe at frame 100 and drag it back to maybe 90. So that he'll just start to rotate forward a little bit sooner. So from 90 to 110, his body's going to start to move forward again. Then we'll go to the very end, so frame 140, and we'll zoom into the robot, and we'll just rotate him down a little bit more, so that as he's going out of the camera view, he'll start to rotate down a little bit more. So now we're going to select the neck, and we're going to animate the head and the neck looking around. So let's go to frame 20. So here we are at frame 20, and let's rotate it on the Z-axis and rotate him looking a little bit away from the camera. Then let's go over to frame 40, and we're going to rotate it slightly farther away. And then let's go over to frame 55, and at frame 55, he's going to look right at us, so right at the camera. So now we can go back to the start and play this, and you can see he just looks right over. Then we're going to duplicate the keyframe at frame 55. We're going to duplicate it and stick it at frame 90 so that his head doesn't really move. So then we're going to go over to frame 110, and at frame 110, we're going to rotate it over so he's kind of looking away again, or looking at the direction that he is moving. So now we can go back to the start and play this, and he looks over at the camera. He's going to wave right here, and then he'll just kind of look away and zoom away. So let's now animate the arms swinging. So I'm going to go back to the starting of frame 1, and we'll zoom into the object, and we're going to select the arms, and we're just going to make the arms kind of relaxed. So kind of rotate it down, rotate this down, and then we're going to rotate the hands or the arms back a little bit, because as he's moving really fast, the arms are kind of swinging behind him. So we're going to move it back a bit, maybe move this back a little bit, and rotate this one back a little bit. And then for the wrist, I actually want to rotate the wrist, so let's rotate it on the Z-axis. So we'll rotate it like that. And then if we select both of the claws, let's move the claws back a little bit. So it kind of looks like they're just kind of hanging behind him and kind of swinging behind him. So on the other side, we'll select the wrist, and we're going to rotate it And then we're going to select both of the claws, and we're also going to rotate that back. All right, so now we can play this and we can just have him come into the scene. So now what I want to do is go to frame 40. Let's go to frame 40. And at frame 40, he's starting to like zoom back and kind of slow down. So at frame 40, I'm going to select these pieces and I'll rotate them up like this, rotate this up. And then also we can rotate the claw arms up a little bit. All right, let's go to the other side of the robot. We're going to do the same thing. So rotate his hand moving forward, kind of like it's swinging forward because it's taking a little while to slow down. So kind of the weight of the hands. All right, but now what I want to do is I want to hold down the shift key and select all of these pieces. So select all of these pieces and these pieces, so basically all of the arms. So now that we have all those pieces selected, we are going to deselect everything, and we're just going to box select the keyframe here at the very starting. So just box select the keyframe at frame 1, and we're going to duplicate it and put it here at frame 30. So now you can see from around 30 to 40, his arms kind of swing forward. And if I go to frame 40, I think I want to open his arms up a little bit, so I'm going to rotate it, maybe rotate it on the Z-axis, like that, so his arms kind of open up a little bit more. So now what I'm going to do is go to frame 55, and I'm just going to rotate his hands back a little bit, just like that, so they're kind of resting there, so they're not really swinging around. So we'll go to the other side and just rotate that, and rotate the claws down. So now you can see his hands kind of swing up and then swing back. So it looks pretty natural, because his hands just have a little bit of weight to it, so when he stops, his hand kind of swing forward and then swings back. So now I'm going to make him waving. So we're going to go to frame 75. And at frame 75, I'm going to make him waving. So we'll just select this arm and we're going to rotate it up like this. Double tap R for the trackball rotation. We'll rotate this up and rotate this up. All right. And then we're going to select this piece and rotate it over. So rotate the wrist over. And then we're going to make his hand or his claw opening kind of like he's waving. Let's go into the camera view, see how that's looking. So from frame 55 to 75, he's going to move his hand up. Then we're going to go to frame 77, and I'm actually going to select all of these hand pieces, and I'm going to box select the ones at frame 75, and I'm going to drag it back to frame 70. So from 55 to 70, he's going to bring his hand up, so it's a little bit faster. Then I'm going to go to frame 77, and at frame 77, I'm just going to rotate it down a little bit, just so that it looks like he's waving. So he just kind of has a little wave there. Let's maybe rotate down a little bit more so it's a bit stronger. And maybe at frame 70, we could rotate this up a little bit more. So from frame 70 to 77, he's going to wave down. And then what we want to do is hold down the shift key and select all of these objects again. And that way we can select all the keyframes for that spot on all those objects. So we're going to box select the keyframes at 70, and we're going to duplicate it, and we're going to drag it over to frame 84. So 70 to 77, and then 77 to 84, he's going to wave back and forth. Then we're going to box select the keyframes at frame 77. So just box select the keyframes, and we're going to duplicate it, and we're going to drag this over and put it here at frame 91. So he just waves a couple of times. And then we're going to go to frame 110. So let's go to frame 110. And we want to deselect everything. And then we want to box select the keyframes at 55. And we're going to duplicate the keyframes at frame 55 and put them at 110. So now he's just going to kind of move his hand down. So you can see that he's just moving his hand down, but then he's also starting to move farther away. You can see he's starting to move away. So I'm going to go to frame 110 and I'm going to rotate it back a little bit. So his hand is kind of flying back. We can also rotate the wrist. So rotate the wrist back again so it's a little bit more straight. All right, and maybe rotate the claws over. So now you can see he just brings his hand down and then he's going to start to move forward. Now I actually think that I want to add another keyframe in here because you can see it's a little bit weird how it rotates. I want him to kind of start to rotate his hand down before it comes back. So let's go to frame 110 and you can kind of see where these are. So what I'm going to do is hold down the shift key and select the 5 pieces there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So select those 5 objects and we're going to take the keyframe at 110 and we're going to duplicate it and put it at maybe like 102 or 103. I'll just put it at 103. And then let's maybe rotate it back a little bit, rotate it in so it's closer to the body. And I also want to rotate it forward a little bit, all right, like that. So you can see now instead of his hand kind of twisting back, it kind of just slides down. It slides down at first before going back. And we'll box select these keyframes and I'm going to drag them a little bit farther back, maybe just to like frame 100. That's a little bit too fast. You can see now he moves his hand down way too fast. So let's move it back to maybe 102, something like that. And then I need to select all of the objects and I want to select these keyframes and drag them together to the same keyframe. So drag them to the same location because I don't want them to be offset. And then what I'm going to do is select the keyframes at frame 110, and I'm just going to delete the keyframes because I just want to remake it. So he kind of moves his hand down, and then let's maybe go to frame 115, and at frame 115, I'll kind of rotate his hand back a little bit. So then as he starts to go away, his hand kind of flies back a little bit. Let's go into camera view and make sure that's looking good. All right, so we can go back to the starting and we can just watch his arms. His hand's going to bring forward. Then he kind of waves a few times and then he starts to zoom away. Now, if we select the other arm, we want this other arm to pretty much stay where it is. So we'll zoom into the other arm and let's go to frame 105. So frame 105, we're pretty much going to add keyframes where it is right now. So let's just select all of the hand pieces and we're going to hit K to inset a keyframe and we're going to add location, rotation, and scale. And then let's go 10 frames over to 115 and we're going to rotate them back a little bit and rotate these back a little bit like that. So as he starts to zoom away, the hand just kind of rotates back a little bit. All right, maybe rotate it a little bit more. So on frame 115, rotate it back a little bit more like that. So we can go back to the starting and play this. So now his hand just starts to slowly kind of move backwards. So let's animate the mouth and the eyes now with the shape keys. So let's go to frame 30, and at frame 30, I'm going to select the eyes, and let's open up the shape keys. So it's going to be here on the object data properties, and let's find the ones that I want. So I'm going to select the eyes left and right, and I'm going to zoom into the character, and I'm going to move his eyes slightly over this way. So drag it over like that, and then I'm going to hit the K button, or the I button. So hit the I button with your mouse hovered over that value. So now I'm going to go one keyframe over to frame 31, and I'm going to rotate this back. Just drag that over so it's more in the center and then hit the I key. So you can see very quickly his eye will jump over a little bit. And then let's find the pupils. So we're going to select the pupils. So we're going to select the pupils left and right. And let's do kind of a similar thing. So we'll go to frame 30 and we'll drag the pupils over so it kind of looks like he's looking more over to this side and hit I to inset a keyframe. Then we're going to go over to frame 31 and let's go to the pupil up and down. So pupil up and down, and we're going to actually go back to frame 30, inset a keyframe there, so hit I, then we'll go one frame over to frame 31, and we're going to drag it up a little bit so it looks like he's looking up, and then hit I. So you can see he's kind of looking forward, kind of down, then he kind of looks up, and then let's go to frame 50, and at frame 49, so we'll go one frame before the end frame, we're going to hit I to inset a keyframe. We'll go to the pupil left and right and hit I to inset a keyframe. And we'll go to the eyes left and right and hit I to inset a keyframe. So we're now going to go over to frame 50 and we're going to drag the eyes over slightly and inset a keyframe. We're also going to just move the eyes into the center and inset a keyframe there. And then the pupil up and down, let's just drag that down there. And because we have auto key on, it's actually going to automatically add a keyframe there. All right, just like that. So now he's kind of looking away, so he kind of moves his eyes up. And then at frame 50, he looks towards us. So then he's going to wave. And then let's go to frame 99. And at frame 99, we're also going to inset keyframes. So hit I, select this one here that we added a keyframe to and hit I, select this one here and hit I. Then we're going to go over to frame 100, and at frame 100, his eyes are going to start to move over a little bit. Let's also move his pupils over a little bit, and we could also maybe move the pupils down a little bit. So he kind of waves, and then he kind of looks away. All right, so now we're going to select the mouth, and we're just going to animate the mouth. So let's go to frame 64, and we're going to use the mouth smile. So we're going to hit the I key to inset a keyframe there. Then we're going to go one frame over to frame 65, and we're going to turn it all the way up to 1 and hit I. So it's immediately going to transition because that makes it look more like a screen, sort of a robotic effect. It kind of almost makes it look like stop motion. So instead of his mouth actually being animated, it'll just go from one frame to the other frame so his mouth opens up. Then let's go to frame 90, and we're going to hit I to inset a keyframe. We'll go one frame over to 91, and we'll turn the value to 0 and inset a keyframe. So he just opens his mouth from frame 65 to frame 90, and then he'll just close his mouth. So let's now do a little bit of camera animation. So I'm going to select the camera, and let's go back here to the starting, and I'll maybe move the camera out. So I'm going to hit G, and then I'm going to double tap Z to drag the camera back and forth, and maybe I'll rotate it up slightly. So let's now go to about frame 70, and at frame 70, I'm going to zoom the camera in. Let's move the camera up, and I can also rotate it up. And I'm going to put the robot kind of on the rule of thirds, so I don't want to put him exactly in the very center. I think it looks slightly nicer if he's kind of in this 1/3 here. So when it comes to like compositing, you might have heard of the rule of thirds, which is kind of to think about a line right down here, and then a line right down here. And it's kind of nice to have whatever you're looking at in the scene to be kind of in this corner here on the thirds instead of in the very center. And actually what you can do is select the camera, and then you can open up the viewport display, and then what you can do is open up the composition guides. And you can see there is the thirds, so there's like the rule of thirds. So with the rule of thirds, you can kind of see with the camera, when I add the thirds there and check mark that, there is this little kind of grid here. So we have this grid here and there, and then we also have it vertically. And so generally, it's nice to kind of make whatever you're focusing on to be kind of in one of these corners. So either this corner where kind of these checkered lines meet, so either that corner, or that corner. And you can see if I put it directly right in front of the character, something just looks slightly off. I just feel like it does look slightly better if it's just slightly to one side, so kind of using that rule of thirds method. So it just kind of zooms in, the camera slowly zooms in, and then we're going to go to the very ending, so frame 140, and we're going to move the camera back out a bit, and we'll rotate the camera on the z-axis just over a little bit. So the camera moves in just a little bit, nice and slow, and then the camera will slowly start to move out and slowly move over to this view, but then at that point the robot's going to move out of the scene. Now the camera starts not moving and it starts to speed up, and then at the end it kind of slows down, and I don't want that. I want the camera to be moving the entire time. So I'm going to click here in the corner and drag out to split the window, and we're going to change the editor type to the graph editor. And let's close these windows on the side because we don't need them. So now what I'm going to do is zoom way out so I can see all the keyframes, and I'm going to box select the very starting keyframes. So make sure you have the camera selected when you do this, so you select the camera keyframes. And I'm going to scale these keyframes, and we're going to scale them on the x-axis by 0. Then I'm going to select the very end keyframes, and I'm going to scale them on the x-axis by 0. So this way, when I just play the animation, the camera's already going to be moving just a little bit. So that's a bit nicer, and at the very end, the camera's still going to be moving. So it's almost like it's more linear at the very starting and ending. So I think that just looks a lot better. All right, so I'm going to click here, drag over and let go just to close the graph editor. And then I'm going to turn off the auto key. That's important. Make sure you turn it off once you're done with the animation. So if I go here to the render properties, we are using Eevee. What I'm going to do is turn on the motion blur because that's definitely going to make it look better. So if I turn on motion blur, it'll just make it kind of blurry when the robot is moving fast. So definitely turn on motion blur. I think it adds a lot to animations. So we now want to set a folder where we can render the frames to. So we're going to go here to the output properties. So here on the file format, I'm just going to leave this as a PNG image. So it'll render out all the frames as PNG. And then right here on the output, I'm going to click on this file icon to set an output. So in my project files, I'm going to click on the plus icon here to create a new folder. I'm going to just call this frames, and I'm going to double click to go into the folder and then just accept that. So all of the rendered images will be saved to the frames folder. So I'll just save the project again with Control S. If you want to do any compositing or anything, you can. I already set up the compositor and I just have this glare in the compositor. So now to render the animation, you can click on render and render animation or use Control F12. All right, so the render is finished. So I'll just save the project again, and then let's click on File. We'll click on New, and we're going to open up a video editing. So here in the video editor, let's go down here to the sequencer, and you can go to the Add menu, and we're going to add Image and Sequence. So then you're just going to locate to the folder where you have the rendered frames, just hit A to select all the frames and click on Add Image Strip. And now we can just play the animation and watch the final thing. I'm also going to click on Strip, and then I'm going to click on Set Render Size, so it sets it to the render size that I rendered it as. And then also let's set the end frame. So here in the corner, I'll set the end frame to 140 because that's the end frame. All right, so the robot comes in, he waves, and then goes out of the scene. So now I'm going to be adding in some sound effects. So the sound effects are all free sounds from freesound.org, and I'll have the link in the description to all the sound effects. So the first thing that I'm going to do is drag in this spaceship ambience, and I'm just going to like drag it up here, and then I'll turn the volume down. Let's just turn the volume down a bit. So maybe like a 0.5 because I don't want it to be too loud. So now we just have kind of a spaceship ambient sound in the background. So now let's also drag in the robot hand. This is called robot hand, but I'm going to use it for the robot's wheels. So let's just drag it over here. Let's kind of zoom out here. So I'm using the control key and then clicking with the middle mouse wheel to zoom out here if you're unfamiliar with the video editor. And I do also have a video editing for beginners tutorial if you do want to learn more about Blender's video editor. So I'm going to drag the sound effect to the very starting like this, and I'm just going to play this. So you can hear that little bit at the starting. I actually really like that for the first part. So I'm going to move over here. Then you can cut the strips using K. Now I've customized the shortcut key to the S button, but you can hit the K button to cut the strips. And then let's just drag this back. So I can go to the starting and play this. And he just kind of moves into the scene. And then what I want to do right here at the very end is I want to fade this out. So I'm going to move my view right here, and I'm going to hit the I key with my mouse hovered over the volume. Then I'm going to go to the very end. We'll turn the volume to 0 and then hit the I key again. So this way at the very end, it's just going to fade out. And maybe I'll drag it a little bit more forward. And then what I want to do is I want to grab this third one right here. So the third one to the end. So you can see there's kind of like one sound here, another sound here. And I'm going to take this sound. So I really like that sound for when he's driving away, but it's a little bit too loud. So I'm going to turn it down to maybe like 0.5 so it's not quite as strong. And then I'm going to cut the strip. So again, hit K to cut. I use the S button, and we can just delete this part of the strip, and we're going to drag it over here so that just as he starts to move away, it'll get louder. All right, and then we can cut the strip and then delete it. So now we just have the starting part, so it kind of comes in. All right, and then right here at the end, he kind of drives away. And then right here at the very end, I am going to fade this out as well. So I'm going to move my view here, hit the I key over the volume. Let's go to the very end, and we can turn the volume to 0 and hit the I key again. So now it just gets a little bit quieter as he goes away. So now the last sound effect that I want to add, I'm going to drag in this one here, the robots have feelings. So this is the sound effect for like the robot's voice. So I'm going to drag this in here, and we can just drag this around, and you can listen to these and just pick which one you like. There's kind of some nice little cute beeps and stuff, so you can find which one you like. Now I'm going to use the 10th one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this one here, I really like this one. So if you take a look here at kind of like the graph of the sounds, I like the 10th one. I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to move my view here, hit the K button to cut the strip, move over to the end, hit the K button to cut the strip, and then you can delete this side and delete that side. So I really like this one here. So I'm just going to move it here to about when the robot opens his mouth. So I'm going to move it so that it starts right when the robot's mouth opens. All right, so let's just drag it over there. Drag it a little bit farther back. Just like that. And then maybe the volume could be turned down a little bit to like a 0.8. So then if you want to, you could add music or add more sound effects, or you could even add multiple shots together and make a little short film or something, whatever you want to do. I'm going to save the video editing file. So I'll click on File and Save. And I'll just save this as video edit in my project files and save the Blender file. And then let's export this to a video. On the output properties, let's scroll down here, and we're going to set an output. So we'll click on the file icon, and I'm just going to have it save in my project files and just accept that. And then right after here, after the /, you could call it like animation or final animation, whatever you want to call it. Then here on the file format, I'm going to use FFmpeg video. Let's open up the encoding, and I'm going to use MPEG-4 as the container. I'm going to use H.264 as the codec, and then medium quality and good. And then here on the audio codec, I'm going to use AAC as the audio codec. So then just save the project, and you can click on render and render the animation. So with that finished, this is going to wrap up the tutorial series. So thank you so much for watching the tutorial series. I hope you learned a lot through the tutorial series, and I hope you had fun following along. And if you enjoy these tutorials and you'd like to help support me and this channel, then some great ways to do that are by checking out my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. So on my Gumroad store and Patreon page, you can get access to 3D models and assets, tutorial files, artwork project files, procedural materials, geometry node modifier setups, and lots more Blender content on my Gumroad store and my Patreon page. Now, if you want to learn how to create more robots in Blender, I actually have quite a few other robot tutorials on my YouTube channel. So I have a sci-fi security drone tutorial series. That's a pretty cool one, so you can check that out if you're interested. I also have a robot drone, which is one of my older tutorials. It was one of my first robots. Then I also have a sci-fi worker robot, and then I also have this really cool mech robot. So he kind of has 2 legs, and I like show you how to create like a walking animation. And I also have a sci-fi combat robot, and this robot has like some cool decals, and he also comes with some weapons. And then also I do have a paid course on how to make a robot, and that is my sci-fi construction robot. So if you'd like to learn how to create more robots in Blender, I'll have links in the video description to all those other robot tutorials. So that'll wrap up the tutorial series, so I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.